Back to the wide world of sports, I mean the wildly chaotic world of Adobe. No, Autodesk. The wonderfully chaotic world of Autodesk Maya. So today I have for you a mug. In class, you should have already completed this mug before we go forward with what we're doing next. It was a tutorial, hopefully not too bad. I think probably the more complicated part was the handle. But I feel like it was a good tutorial. So now what we want to do is we actually want to texture this thing. So I want to explain textures just a little bit. So first of all, I'm just going to go ahead and add a new material to this mug, a standard surface. And of course, I can change the color and things here. But you're going to notice here on the side, these little checkerboards. These essentially invite you to add some other node that will inform these values here. So for color, for instance, if I wanted it to be a certain texture, I could just pick a texture. There's a few things on here. But what I'm going to want to do is pick a file so that I can control what this texture looks like ultimately. But in order to do that, we need to create a texture map or a UV map. So let's go over some slides here real quick. It's a little different than materials. Materials, all that does is informs Maya how the actual model surface reacts to light. But if we want to add more complicated things like this little house here, we need to be able to project a 2D image onto this 3D object. All right. So there's going to be some translation going on, right? We have to tell the software to project this 3D thing as a flat thing so that we can get that texture going. So if you've ever seen a globe or a map, or if you've heard of map projections for atlases, you know that there is a little bit of distortion because we have to show a 3D space as a 2D space. So each vertex in Maya has the XYZ value that we've talked about. But in order to put it onto a 2D value, we have to assign it a new set of coordinates called a UV or U and V, right? So again, we're trying to unwrap this onto a flat plane. And you can see here with this lady model, sometimes it can look a little scary. But our goal here is we're trying to project it in a way that it does not appear distorted on our figure. All right, so you can see here, you can clearly see the numbers on her. So that tells me that this is not distorted. Okay, but it can look a little freaky, especially on the face. So we'll think about that. All right, so we have to project this mug into a 2D picture, right, with UVs. So first of all, before I really get going on this, I want to make sure that all of the little history things like, I don't know, polytweak or extrude or all that stuff, that it's clear, that it's deleted. So I've already done that, but for you guys, you can come up to Edit, Delete All by Type, History. So that will clear out all your history so that you only see these 3 tabs in the attribute editor. I should only see those 3 things. We also want to freeze transformations to essentially tell Maya, hey, if I move this around at any point, that the new object origin is going to be the origin, right? So I'm going to say freeze transformations. You can use this little snowflake button, or you can go to modify freeze transformations. And that way it sets all the stuff to, so let me show you the channel box. Of course, let me go ahead and freeze those transformations. It sets all of that the rotation, the translation to 0. It also will set the scale to 1 if you haven't done that yet. All right, so it's nice and clean. We don't have any outside numbers trying to mess with our texturing. That's really what it is that we want to make sure that's clear so it doesn't interfere with more of the math that we're going to make the program do. All right, so I have a nice clean model, but I want to get into the workspace for UVs so I can get that texture going. So I'm going to come up here to workspace and go UV editing. Okay, so it brings up a perspective camera, and it also brings up this window called the UV editor. So right now, my UVs for this mug are kind of incomprehensible. Like, I don't know what this is. There's a couple of different shells, but it's like all on top of itself. Like, it's not great. I can't, I don't want my UVs to overlap. It can cause some problems when you're trying to paint on it. So this is not going to be helpful for us. So we want to tell the software, hey, can you project a different UV map for me? And you can do that under the UV editor, under create. So they have a bunch of options here. You would probably think, hey, this is a cylindrical object. Maybe I can try doing the cylindrical projection. So, hey, let's do it. I'm going to go ahead and do it. This tool requires one. Oh, okay. Sorry. Make sure you're in object mode before you do that. So I'm going to say cylindrical. And now this is what the map looks like. Now it kind of looks more like my actual mug. If I want to edit this, I can move these around to stretch or compress. But honestly, this is going to distort my view as well, right? It's going to stretch anything that I put on there. So if I turn on the checker map up here, next to the standard surface 2, it's right here. If I turn that on, you're going to see there's a lot of distortion going on. Like, these checker cubes should be a discernible square. So this isn't going to work either, especially in here. Right, so we need a different solution. I'm going to turn those checkers off. I want to have Maya try to figure out how to project this with the automatic projection. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do that. So this is what I get. Now the pieces make a little bit more sense. If I turn that checkerboard on, now I don't have any distortion. Well, I have a little bit of distortion, but it's a lot better. The problem is now that I have a ton of different pieces. And because I have a ton of different pieces, there's going to be a lot of seams going on. So if I try to paint on this and I go off the edge, it's going to appear that way on the mug too. So what do we do to fix this? So what we need to do is we need to sew it together. Okay, but why am I using the term sew instead of like glue or something? Well, that's the terminology they use in Maya. So in order to put pieces or edges together, you have to say move and sew or stitch together, right? We use that sewing analogy because, okay, we already talked about that. Because this is kind of like making a sewing pattern, especially for like a little teddy bear or something. Yes, I know the actual mapping is a lot more disturbing than that. But this is a good way to think about it because of the whole sewing analogy. All right, so what I want to do, the goal here is I want there to be a continuous wrapper around my mug. That way I can paint on it and the design will appear on my mug without any seams or interruptions. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to find my front piece. And so let's backtrack a little bit. So in order for me to see that, over here in my UV view, I right-clicked and said UV shell. So that lets me pick the little pieces. Your projection might be different because your mug is different because you made it. This may not look the same for you. That is okay. That is no means to panic. It's going to be unique because it's going to look at your construction. It's going to try to figure out from its algorithm what it's going to look like. So your results may vary. Your mileage may vary. All right. So I found the front piece here. And what's cool about UV Editor is I can navigate it very similar to other things. If I hold Alt and middle mouse click, I can pan. I can also use the move and scale and rotate tools. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this front shell and kind of move it out of the way so that I have some room to work. Because I want to lay this all out. I'm going to go to edge mode after that. So I want to kind of see that these edges line up on the mug. Hold on, come on. You can see here, as I go across these edges, it lines up with this seam on the actual mug model. But it's also going to correspond to edges on other shells. So you can kind of see here that as I'm highlighting this, it is highlighting that other one. Okay. So I want to tell the software, hey, I need to sew these two together. So in order to do that, I need to select this whole side edge here. And you can go through and hold Shift and click down the whole side. Or you can hold Shift and do a marquee and grab what you need and then hold the Shift again and remove what you don't need. All right. So now I have a seam right here. I'm going to go ahead and go up to Cut and Sew. And I'm going to click on Move and Sew. If I click on that, now that other shell moves over here and sews itself to the other piece. All right, so now I have more of my wrapper. All right, since I want this to be continuous, I'm going to go on the other side. So I'm going to say edge. And I'm going to grab the other edge. And I'm going to try to be as precise as I can. You may want to zoom in. I'm just trying to do it the easy way so that we're not here for hours. Okay, I only want this outside edge. Don't worry about this notch. I only want this outside edge. Okay, and then I'm going to do it again. I'm going to say Cut Sew. We're going to Move and Sew. And as you can see, I now have more of this wrapper going on. Now what's left is this back piece. So there's something else I want to do with this because I want a continuous seam. So just like we've been sewing stuff, we can also cut stuff. So I want to cut this piece in half. So I'm going to go back to my edge mode and I'm going to select these middle, this edge that goes down the middle. Okay, and I'm going to do the marquee way again because I don't want to be here all day. Neither do you. This is the part of 3D that can get a little tedious. Okay, so now I've got that center line cut. So I'm going to come up to Cut and Sew and I'm going to say Cut. And once I do that, now I have a solid white line down the middle. So let me go to UV Shell and now I have two separate chunks of mug. And after I'm done, the only seam on this outside should be down the back here where the handle is. All right, so I'm going to get those edges just like I did before. We're going to try to... Don't worry if you can't get this precise. I've been doing this for a million years, so don't feel bad. Okay, Cut and Sew, Move and Sew. Do the same thing here. Right, and then I'm going to say Cut, Sew, Move and Sew. All right, now I have an entire wrapper going around the outside of my mug. Neat. All right. There is some notches going on here. It's going to attach to the bottom of these mugs here. If you so wish, you can connect these. I think that goes together. Nope, I am upside down. It goes over there. You can connect these to have like that bottom piece, but you don't have to. If you're like, man, I hate that this seam is like this, you can cut it and sew it onto this one. Like, hey, it's up to you. I'm mostly worried about having a continuous wrapper here. All right. So that's my exterior. Let's go ahead and do it to the inside as well. We're going to rearrange all this stuff here in a second. So I'm going to move that off. These, it doesn't necessarily matter the order. Just kind of figure out where you want your seam. If you want it to be in the back where the other one is, let's figure that out. So edge, so it's going to be this one is that back seam. So we'll just leave that one. So that means I'm going to grab this side. If you want to move it, you know what, honestly, we can move it. I like to move stuff so I can have room to work. I'm going to go to edge. And right now I'm going to fast forward through doing all this because I just demonstrated. So I will just see you on the other side, I guess. So now I have the interior wrapper, more or less. So like if you wanted to paint a different color on the inside of the mug, that is totally possible. You can do that. As far as the handle goes, it is kind of a mess. If you want to hook all these together, you can. I'm probably going to just because I like that. But my main goal here is to make sure that you have these outer wrappers, the outer and inner wrappers. Okay. We may have to do some rearrangement here. In fact, yes, we will. So I can fit everybody on here. That's part of the reason the automatic one does that. I'm just going to prioritize all that. Okay, there's the interior, there's the exterior. Here's my butts. Here is handle nonsense. You can arrange it however you want. Again, I am looking for these wrappers in your assignment. We're gonna put, okay, this circle is a problem. I probably should have, you know what I can do? I can put them inside the circle. Ooh, now we're thinking with portals. I don't know. I bet you Disney will be like, what is wrong with you? Like if I went to their studio and I showed them this, they'd be like, why? Why are you like this? Whatever. So I've got it arranged to prioritize my wrappers. All right. So now that I have that, now what, right? Now what do I want to do? So the cool thing is I can export this out to an art software that uses layers. You can use Photoshop. You could use Clip Studio. I'm going to use Photoshop for this demonstration. So what you can do is in our UV editor, I can come up to Image, and I'm going to say UV Snapshot. It's right here on the bottom. So when I do that, I have a bunch of options. So right here, file name, if you click Browse, it will let you name it. So I'm going to name it as soon as it comes up. I'm going to say Mug UV for the video. Woo. Okay, I'm going to save that. I want to save this image format as a TIFF. So the reason why I'm not doing Photoshop, for one thing, it's just not been nice to me. If you can get it to do it right, more power to you. But I'm using a TIFF because this image format supports layers. You can change your resolution. You can make it as big as you want. Just know the bigger the file, the longer it will load. Let's just do 5,000, right? But also the resolution, you want it to be nice. On edge color, I set mine to black just so that I can see the lines when I go into Photoshop. You can change it whatever you want. If you want it to be like pink or lime green or whatever, more power to you. All right, so I'm going to say apply and close. And on the bottom it says saved file. Very cool. I'm going to come over to Finder and go to my Maya images. So you can find that if you go to Documents, Maya, Projects. And then my project is called Maya Beginner. And I'm in Images. So let me find muguvvideo.tif. I'm going to right click, and I'm using Photoshop for this. You can also, honestly, you could probably do this in Procreate. Just be aware of the size. So I'm going to say open with Adobe Photoshop 2024. And then you're like, oh my God, what? There's nothing here. There is something here. The lines are very thin. They're very hard to see. To help me see this, I'm just going to say plus, and to make a new layer, and I'm just going to fill the background so I can see what the heck I'm doing. Boom. There's our UV map. Oh my gosh. So I want you do not want to paint on this lines layer. You want to make sure this stays separate. I'm going to go ahead and lock it. And then I'm going to add another layer between that and the background, and I'm just going to make a message on my mug, and it's going to say coffee or get out. I'm going to make sure that's centered. No, I want it all centered. Thank you. Make sure that's where I want it to be, kind of. Make sure we got a color going on. Coffee or get out. Please do something better for yours. I'm just going to paint some stuff on here. Maybe in red, or maybe like a smiley face. Coffee or get out. I'll make sure that's on a layer. So I'm going to be like, I need a bigger brush. Whatever. I'm going to be like, coffee or get out. Hee hee hee. And put an unhinged smiley face there. All right, so before we pop this back into Maya, I need to turn off those lines. Because we don't want to project the lines right back onto it. And I'm going to say file save as, export as. You can do a PNG, you can do a JPEG, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to do a PNG. I'm going to say export. I'm going to call this Mug UV Video Color, so I know what the heck it is. All right, save. Coming back into Maya. Oof, that's jarring. I'm going to go to my standard surface. And remember when I was talking about the checkerboards? All right. So under base, under color, I'm going to click on that checkerboard. And I'm going to click on file. Okay. Now I need to give it a file. So I'm going to give it, I don't know why we're in here and not color. Hold on. Up. Let's go to images. Let's go to Mug UV. Why are we doing this? What is happening here? Mug UV video.tif. Nope, that's what I just did. Where did it save? File export as. Blah, 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 Mr. Freeman. It's source images. Okay. Oh, okay. So you want to go to, not images, but you want to go to source images. That's where I saved mine. And I'm going to go to AV or Mug UV video color. And there's my coffee or get out, smiley face. I'm going to say open. Doesn't show over here. So in order to make that show, I'm going to come up to shading and say hardware texturing. And now I have my coffee or get out mug happening. It's a textured brush, so the textures do in fact show up. All right, so that's essentially it. There are other types of maps that we're going to talk about, but this is essentially UV mapping. Of course, when you're doing it with other objects, it can get more complicated, but you want to make sure that you have something that's nice, that you understand how to paint, and that the software doesn't distort. Okay, so if I turn that checker on, it distorts just a little bit, but it's not too bad. Okay, that is the assignment. Please make yours prettier than this. This is an example. Have fun. Make something cool. I really want to see some cool mugs.